Steve, hi. Great to talk to you. Really appreciate you doing this interview for me at Get Your Rock Out.
Yeah, thank you.
Just wanted to start with you now have been touring the Genesis Revisited and Extended projects for quite some time. Has the massive demand that you've had for the live shows surprised you at all?
Excuse my throat. I've got a bit of tour leggy after 3 months on the road.
I can imagine, yeah.
No, it has surprised me very, very pleasantly, and I keep reminding myself that the Genesis music is the star of the show, and that's what people want to see and hear.
Yeah.
So I try and take ego out of it, and I like to think they come along to see my version of it, because it's kind of from the horse's mouth, as opposed to one stage removed by someone who's doing a total tribute to it, who's come to it maybe 20 or 30 years later. But as one of the perpetrators of it originally, writing that stuff with everybody, kicking the football about backwards and forwards, nothing was sacred until it was finished. I think that there's something about the writing itself that has lasted. I don't think it's just because there was a large marketing budget for it way back in the day, because there wasn't. These albums were a very slow burn, and then gradually over time they became hailed as whatever people see them as today. But at the time, it was much more of a kind of there's a mountain to climb, that sort of feeling. But it's great that people still love it. I tend to think that the devil's in the detail, and there was a lot of detail in these early things. They were not they were not stripped out. They were not drum dependent on the way that you had enormous drums in the 80s.
Yeah.
And less detail in order to allow a rhythm to be king. I think in the early days, I think the harmonies, keyboard harmonies, and the kind of intertwining of guitar and keyboard together, so you couldn't really tell what was what. I think that was a lot of the appeal. Was that, just sonically, what the hell are these guys doing? What's going on here? What am I hearing? Am I hearing harpsichord? Am I hearing 12-string? Is it piano? And all, in the crossover of all the corners of all those instruments, where they started to sound a little bit like each other, that was really where Genesis got on board. So it was quite subtle, really.
It must have been an incredibly exciting time, though, or perhaps didn't realise that at the time you were making this music.
It was, I think at the time, I had a lot of frustration with the equipment I had and with the technique that I possessed. So, technology and techniques, if you wanted to sound like an orchestra, you had a Mellotron, which enabled you to do that from time to time. And I pushed hard for the band to get one of those, and a synth and all that. And all those things, are part of the keyboard arsenal that ran throughout the 70s. Of course, so much of this is all done on a patch these days. So, but it's nice that the Mellotron strings that I use, for instance, are actually taken at source, so they're before it goes through Mellotron technology, and they were very interesting samples. From 1953, Three Women in a Bedroom in New York, I think it was. These things were recorded, and they keep cropping up on everyone's album. From Michael Jackson to anything. There's just masses around.
So would you say it was easier then to recreate the music in a live setting now than it was then?
Well, I think it was always designed to be played by about 5 people. So no matter how big that sounded or small, we could do it that way. But when I got around to re-recording a lot of it, I was using orchestra and thinking, we don't have to limit it to to the technology of the day, wonderful though that was.
Yeah.
I still think you can achieve authenticity without all of that. It was a lot of fun going back to it. I've had a blast going back to this, and I love doing it live. And it's taken up 2 years of my life now. It'll take me up to the end of this year, and then I'm going to get on with my own stuff. So, back to being me after this, rather than all things 70s.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, because Out of the Tunnel's Mouth and Beyond the Shrouded Horizon were really, really impressive releases, and at the time were very well received. So, how hard was it to make the decision to defer what you were doing to the Genesis material?
Well, I tell you what was happening. I was playing to larger and larger audiences, and being offered larger and larger venues, and I thought, well, yes, I can do that, but at the same time, I've always wanted to do a revisited number 2, because I did one in 96, and I thought, there's all these other songs, and then there's the stuff where one of the guys at EMI was saying to me, I think you should do songs where guitar is crucial to the plot. And I said, well, that's a whole other album. I was just choosing my favourite songs. So I ended up doing a double album, about 150 minutes long, and we were hard pushed, because we had 30 to 40 people on the album, and we were hard pushed to bring it in during 8 months. It was flat out work, and Roger and I were going a bit green by the end of it. We were looking a bit like we hadn't seen daylight for centuries, and but nonetheless, it sounded big and beautiful and wonderful, and I'd fixed a number of things that I wasn't happy with on the originals. So the originals are still there, so I'm not really messing with anyone's childhood. If you like the originals, there it is in its full glory. If you want your music a tad more precise in time and in tune at the same time, for instance, then and enlarged to encompass orchestras and with a number of singers, so it's not really dependent on any one guy trying to be either Mr. Gabriel or Mr. Collins, then I think the revisited album might be for you. Sort of distillation or a summation of what the band was all about, having over years, decades, being able to do my own survey about what people really liked about it, what are the facts that really turned people on, and why did they get turned onto it, and whether I wanted to listen or not. That information was always being volunteered. So, in a way, it's the fans who've chosen this material. It's not just me. It's people saying, "Oh, well, no, I really like Fountain of Sam Arthurs. That's really beautiful. How come that was never a hit in its day?" And I'll go, well, we're playing that live now, and it was extremely difficult to pull off in the old days with with monitors being able to hear each other, and never mind the fact that the Mellotron would often end up in a different key by the end of the song. No wonder people thought it was. Sorry.
God bless the Mellotron.
God bless the Mellotron. Yeah, that reluctant Frankenstein, that diva of a keyboard that when she deigned to sing properly in tune was brilliant. But other times, I'm mindful of the clanking of bicycle chains grinding to a halt and coming off the wheel. Yeah.
The opening of Watcher, of course, is seminal, really, isn't it? It's just incredible.
It is beautiful. I mean, that was originally Mellotron brass, string, and English accordion doing the bass part of it. And we used to get reviews of that, and people used to say, the organ introduction to Watch of the Skies. And I was saying, no, we got this Mellotron off of King Crimson. No, we bought one of their second-hand ones because we were like Pink Floyd on National Assistance when we started out. That was,
If I could just go off track for a second here, I just wanted to say that Spectral Mornings is one of my all-time favourite albums, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that album all these years later.
Well, funnily enough, whenever I look back, that's really my favourite rock album, the favourite one that I've done, and there's a very good chance that that's going to be remixed in 5.1 for release next year.
Right.
Anyway, negotiations are underway as regards that, and its predecessor, Please Don't Touch. But I that one, there's something magic that happened on that album.
I think so, yeah.
Whatever musicians do, I mean, they set up the same conditions. You can go into rehearsal rooms, you can form bands, you can be playing music for a lifetime, but just sometimes something special happens and takes over. And I think something very special happened there with that combination of characters at that time, and I think the fact that that band had just played an English and European tour and been tremendously well received, and all those guys hadn't played on the material that they were playing live. We were premiering a little bit of what was to become that album, and so they had input on that, and we were able to routine it before it was recorded, but not that much. Clocks, perhaps, and Spectral Mornings, the title track, we were playing live, as I recall. So, and those were in some ways quite simple instrumentals, but then tracks like Every Day and Virgin the Gypsy and Red Flower, Tai Chi, that as a block, I think, I always think, I would love to be able to do something like that again, but of course you can't. You have to do something different. But I'm very fond of it, and I saw Nick Magnus last night for dinner, as it happens, and so we're very close. I've worked on stuff of his recently. He's done a wonderful solo album himself called Mnemonics that's already into its third pressing since he signed to Cherry Red. I'm on a couple of tracks of it, but it's wonderfully well written, and he really went to town with the production, and he was describing the process of some of it. That's a whole other story, but I'm still very close to the team that put that album together. And I saw my brother playing at the Central Hall, which is just off of Parliament Square, playing basically stuff. Some of it was rock originally, but done in a classical style, with pipe organ and flute, and so I'm still very much in touch with that team, and they were very clever.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I just better come back to the present now, and you're about to release a DVD of the Royal Albert Hall show.
That's right.
And what was it like to play this wonderful music in such a famous venue?
Well, I'd been thinking about this for a long time. I've wanted to do the Royal Albert Hall. Earlier the same week, in fact, I went to see Stephen Wilson doing his show there.
I saw you there, actually.
Did you?
In the corridor, yes.
It's funny that, isn't it? And I thought he put on a tremendous show. He always does. And Nick Beggs was playing in his band at the time, who's now playing in my band. And Nick was playing in mine for a couple of years before he was working with Stephen. So we had Lee Pomeroy on bass and 12-string doing the Albert Hall. I wanted to make it a special occasion. So we had Strauss Waltzes to accompany people taking their seats to make it as much of a gala event without having to wear the stuffed shirt as much as possible, but to capture the spirit of the place and honour that aspect of it. I have to say I was very nervous on the night. Just before I went on, I just couldn't get this thought out of my mind that there I was in Eric Clapton's dressing room, as they call it, or just off to the side, just by the stage, and about to mount that stage, thinking, yes, this is where Holst premiered The Planets. There's no pressure, There's never been anything good here, and I was, I think, as nervous as I've ever been on stage, thinking, really? I hope I can pull this off. Yeah, even though I'd done 1,000 gigs and what have you. And but once the evening got underway, I was thrilled that the band was on such great form, and I think the difference, because it's a bit like being a trained racehorse, the difference between whether you're nervous or flighty on the night, or whether you're completely relaxed. There's minimal differences with a band that was as well rehearsed as that. So I think the guys were a lot more relaxed about it than me. I could see that Roger was having a ball. You can see it on the DVD. Every time it goes to Roger on keyboards, he's just smiling away and making faces, and the most relaxed I've ever seen him. I thought,
enjoying the moment.
Enjoying the moment, and there's me gritting my teeth, going, I hope I can remember the next note. I don't want to fall off the horse here. So I was really relieved by the time we'd done the last note and pulled it all off. It was a great feeling, and I think he said immodestly, it is a really great show. I was thrilled with the way it looked and sounded, and it really was something to remember.
That's great. I'm coming to see the show in Southend in the autumn.
Right.
So you're coming back to Britain, of course. So what can we expect on that leg of the tour?
Well, we've changed the set round. There are some things that we haven't done live before. Well, we've done them in Europe now because I was there 3 months. But we're including some other numbers. We're doing The Knife from Trespass.
Wow.
Which was the album a year before I joined the band. But I'd recorded a version of that for Genesis Live with Genesis way back in 72, 73. Excuse me. Excuse throat. Then we do a version of Lily White Lilith, and we also do Squonk in no particular order. There we are, just in order of how they work best during a set.
Yeah.
We segue going from Lily White Lilith into The Knife, and it's such a great wake up by the time it comes into that. So it's lovely doing Lily White Lilith. In fact, I do what Mike Rutherford used to do on baritone guitar through a fuzz box. I do that with my guitar taken down a tone, and Nick is on stick for that. And we've also got the riff doubled on Mellotron brass. So it's a strange hybrid, all of that, but it does sound good.
You're really whetting my appetite. I was already looking forward to it. I can't wait now.
It sounds very good. It's an extraordinary thing. I'm having to do a total tap dance on that one in order to sort of stop being the bass, in order to be the guitar and what have you. But even with those gaps, it's still mighty. It's got this sort of, here comes a shed of a sound at you. It's probably much the same as I think, when I see Stephen Wilson stuff live, he's probably got no idea the power that it comes across. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
it is very powerful.
When you get all those things lined up and the riffs are all dead right and the band are playing with precision, everyone knows what they're doing. You've got the team, you've got the modern army occupying your territory. It's something that I first saw, I have to say, way back in the day. It was not really until I saw King Crimson that before they'd even made their first album, that I saw a band who could turn on a dime, were obviously rehearsed into the ground and then some. And the idea of an ensemble playing as one, that was what struck me. Up to then, I'd really been listening to mainly either the Beatles, the Stones, the Hendrix, all of that, and blues-based stuff, and I was listening to classical music as well. I was listening to blues and Bach and all of that, but I never thought that would all come together. And then King Crimson showed that it was possible for a band to solo as one, if you know what I mean. One instrument, and I was looking for a band that might be able to do that. When I joined Genesis, I think they were far from that. Was doing songs like Happy the Man. You're quite sort of happy-go-lucky in a way.
Still very early days, of course.
Still very early days. They were doing The Knife, which I think on a good night was tight. And in a way, there's an aspect of Deep Purple about that, if you know what I mean. I think there's an aspect of Black Knight about that. There's an aspect of family in there. There's various things, but I still think it was rather cleverly written. We used to think it was a very basic number, but I think compared to what a lot of rock bands were doing then and now, it's actually quite subtle.
I think you've only got to look at the... Sorry. I was going to say, I think you've only got to look at some of the sort of later progressive rock bands, and that sort of bounciness is a theme that's endemic in a lot of music. You can clearly see that people have been heavily influenced by that, and others, of course. But certainly that song was a real sort of a trigger point, I think.
Yes, it was, and I think it's one of the reasons why I ended up joining the band, or else I wouldn't be doing a version of it now, paying my homage to it. So, I thought, if I join these guys, I think I might be able to drum up a bit of a storm on this one, on the guitar. And what I hadn't realised was that I'd be soloing in A-flat minor, if that's what I wanted to do, because they were using... very often keyboard-friendly keys, F sharp or F sharp minor, A flat minor, keys that guitarists don't normally write in because you're hoping to have open strings to fall back on, and there aren't too many open strings to fall back on when you're doing that. So you'd be nipping up and down your scales, as it were. In those days, though, I couldn't really bend a note and vibrato it properly. I wasn't, it took me decades to get that stuff together. No matter how I worked on it, I realised that in order to do that, you had to bend slow and wide in order to get a really great vibrato and not have any fear, or else it just becomes a twitch. And it took a long time for me to cotton on to exactly what that was, and I had the accident to my hand, which made my hand weaker and made it harder to do that. So I use light gauge strings. I use eighths, whereas most guitarists, I think these days, tend to favour something heavier. But then I don't have any problem with that now.
But it's a craft, isn't it? So you're perfecting it all the time.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're jumping through hoops, and most of the hoops I've jumped through have been of my own devising. But at times, there've been various sort of flamenco techniques that have foxed me, for instance. And it's only just recently that some of those have come into focus. You could be puzzling about this stuff for years. And you suddenly realise, oh yes, this right-hand move has got a certain rhythm to it. So that's what you're looking for. And it took ages for the penny to drop with some of this stuff.
It must be a feeling of great satisfaction when it clicks, though.
Oh, it is a feeling of great satisfaction when it clicks. Yeah. Oh, it's a great feeling, and then it reinvents guitar for you all over again. I'm always falling in and out of love with the guitar the whole time. There's a little treble booster I've managed to acquire recently called Analog Man Beano Boost, and suddenly it's got that Eric Clapton circa 1966 with John Mayall sound about it, and and that's a thrill. You know, less notes, more scream. You develop solos in a different way.
That's coming back to the whole thing about new technology allowing you to do things somewhat differently, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. But without the tyranny of volume, you're getting the sound without having to kill people. Without having to ruin your hearing and your health, standing in front of a Marshall stack or two, as people did back in the 1960s and perhaps still do amongst heavy metal bands now. But I think to be able to record a guitar solo at such a low a level that you could hold a conversation over it, but it's still screaming as if the tubes were throbbing, but it's going through all this stuff in miniature to contort it and inform it. But the alchemy is still there. It's just we're very lucky that I've got, for instance, guitars that will sustain the Fernandez Japanese guitars. They've got onboard sustainer pickups, so it'll feed back without any volume dependence, and you don't have to be standing near your amp or the head or the speakers in order to get that. You're just getting that naturally from the guitar.
It's definitely less is more, isn't it?
It is less is more. Yeah, that's funnily enough. When I was working with Brian May years ago, we were working on some material together, and he said to me, "Less is more," and I think you can hear that in the Queen stuff, that they allow things to speak and have moments of, here's 100 voices, but it's not competing perhaps with everything else. It's what you take out, I think, that often makes the difference, rather than having 100 weight of cement plus steel girders coming at you.
Steve, I'm very mindful that we're slightly overrunning.
Sure.
So I'm regrettably, I'm just going to have to ask you one more question.
That's okay, of course. Yeah.
I'm sure it's one you get asked all the time, but with especially with sort of Phil Collins re-emerging, do you think that means that a full Genesis reunion, the chances have increased?
I think the chances have increased. I know that he's working up to getting fit and what have you, and so I hope he manages to go all the way with that, and I hope we manage to do something in the future. Other than that, I don't have any information as regards that. There's nobody knows, and it would certainly be nice, wouldn't it be good?
It would, yeah. But in the meantime, we've got you recreating it so well. So
thank you.
I'd like to really thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much.
Best of luck with the DVD, and I'll see you in October.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.